Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, September 17th, 2025, and today we have a special treat for you. Farmer Mikey Densham is going to join me for the show to talk a bit about the challenges of farming there in Australia, where he and his partner Kez run a market garden called Five Tails Farm. I'll link all that in the show notes. We discuss some of the tools that make their work easier and more organized, and Mikey got a scholarship that sent him all over the world to look at what makes small farms productive and profitable, and what he found may surprise you. Anyway, I will let Mikey get into all that, but before we dive in, we're going to get a quick word from our friends at Rimmel Greenhouse Systems. Whether you're growing tomatoes for market, flowers in the spring, or vegetables for your family, growing in a high tunnel protected from the weather provides the right environment for a harvest you can count on. Rimmel greenhouses are strong, durable, and easy to assemble, offering the quality you need to grow productively year-round. The team of experts at Rimmel Greenhouse Systems will be your trusted partners to ensure you get exceptional value from your greenhouse or high tunnel investment. Visit Rimmel.com today to get growing. All right, here is Mikey Densham of Five Tails Farm. Mikey Densham, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Super excited to have you. I always, you and I have had many discussions over the years. I always enjoy them, but I'm hoping maybe you could start with just like introducing yourself a little bit, where you are, what you're up to, those sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, obviously I run a business, Five Tails Farm, with my partner, Kez. We've been running that now we're our third year now. So third year, second farm site. We actually started the farm on a different site, and then after the first year we moved it, so we've been on our current site, which is now a property owned by us. We've been here for 2 years. We are located in southeastern Australia, so an hour and a half an hour and 45 minutes out of Melbourne, which is a major city, 5 million people. And we're located in a pretty amazing pocket. I think to the US audience, it's kind of similar-ish to parts of maybe the wetter parts of California in terms of its kind of climate. So mild winters that are kind of wet, warm summers, so nothing extreme on either side. It's kind of a very mellow climate. We get a good rainfall of about average of 1 meter a year. And the majority of that, it's actually pretty well spread throughout the year. So even in the summer, we can get a really nice downfall. So overall, it's a really good place to grow. We're very lucky. What else can I say? Yeah, we're a vegetable farm. We grow vegetables and we sell primarily to the restaurant market. That's our primary clientele. However, we do sell to a number of grocery stores. And I'd say, for interest's sake, 70 to 80% of our income is not full dollar value. So it's going to either selling to retailers or middlemen. And then the remaining 20% is direct customer, so full dollar.
And with those direct, is that like you're doing a farm stand sort of thing, or what? How does it get? What are the direct sales coming from?
The majority of the direct sales actually are a select number of restaurants that we've built up a really close relationship with and decided to kind of work with them. So they get our regular fresh list of items that we have, but we also have specific lines that we grow only for them. So only for a number of restaurants. The rest of them we'll sell into. We have a really great partner, Natura, who we work with. I think they operate in the States as well, in Florida and New York. So they operate out of Melbourne, and they're a really great partner of ours. So we actually supply the majority of the restaurants we work with through them. But as I said, there's a select few which we have a really close relationship with, or perhaps they're outside the catchment of Natura, who kind of represent us through a lot of the restaurants. So yeah, it's actually really nice having those very select few and building those relationships, as opposed to what we had previously. We were growing to a lot more restaurants, and some of the relationships were a bit kind of, I don't know, they're just not really what we were hoping out of relationships. It's a bit here, it's a bit there, maybe not as appreciative, not enough depth to it. So building on those close relationships and being able to kind of call them out and be like, hey, like, we've got some great stuff, can you pick up these certain items, and going out of our way to find really unique stuff which makes their menus shine is something we've been working on as well.
Yeah, that's cool. So it's basically like one distributor and then a handful of restaurants that you work really well with. I love that. That's that. I mean, that we had a similar model last year where we had one distributor that had a bunch of restaurants that they worked with, and we could sell to them, and then they would basically distribute it however they needed to. You've been on several different farms now. Maybe just tell us a little bit of like the path to Five Tails, like what the other farms were and how you got to Five Tails.
Yeah, so the previous farm some people have been following on the journey was a really amazing farm called Mossy Willow Farm, which was on the Mornington Peninsula, so again about an hour and a half out of Melbourne. And we managed that farm for about 5 years and put our heart and soul into it. We growing some beautiful produce, had an incredible team, and that went really well for a number of years. We were mainly actually focused on the farmers market. That was our primary income there. But as what happens to a lot of businesses during COVID, we basically said we were managing that business. We weren't the owners of the business. So COVID came around, and that kind of caused a lot of, I think, a lot of schisms, a lot of challenges to a lot of businesses, big, small, and just people's personal lives. So we actually ended up stepping away from that business, and kind of floated, travelled for about a year, and then myself and Kez always wanted to start our own business. And we ended up teeing up with a friend of ours, Jessie, who was she actually was an intern at Mossy Willow with us for a season. We got along really well, loved the energy. So we actually then launched Five Tails together 3 years ago. And we started that journey off on rented land. So we actually located that business very close to the previous business. So we actually could tap into previous markets, partnerships, people that we're already selling to. And that was on rented land. So yeah, we put a lot of finances into setting that up on rented land, which I'm sure a lot of people listening who have in similar scenarios, it's difficult. It's not easy on rented land. Market gardening is, well, I think it's capital intensive. It really is. There's a lot of money that needs to go in, and the more you want to produce and the higher quality, I really believe it comes down to better equipment, better infrastructure, and it's just really challenging doing that on rented land. So actually, after our first year renting there, it was a really challenging year seasonally wise. We had an incredibly wet spring, which was just when we were planting all our crops, and the site turned out to be a more challenging site. So yeah, with all the experience we had, went in gung-ho, and it was just a lot of challenges. So after that first year, actually, we decided to split ways with our friend Jessie, and Kez and I basically bought out her share, and then we kind of had made a decision that it was the thought of continuing on rented land at that point was just a bit of a no-go. It was kind of like, do we close the business down or do we find our own land? And we were very fortunate. We'd been searching for a long time to find a parcel of land, and found one, bought it, and packed up the farm in the winter season, moved the entire farm up, and we're back producing by that summer. So it was a mad period, but pretty stoked. And now, we just clocked over 2 years since we moved onto this site. So it's pretty crazy looking back and being like, holy moly, 2 years, and what we've achieved is we're pretty stoked, I reckon.
Yeah. And I remember you writing, we corresponded a little bit about some of the challenges you were having on that first farm. And maybe we can talk about that. We're going to take a really quick break, and we'll come back and talk about some of the key challenges of farming there in Australia, and maybe just on that soil and that land that you had previously, and maybe some of moving the farm, because that is a whole ordeal. BRB. Today's episode of the Growers Daily is brought to you by Farmhand. Farmhand is the virtual assistant built for farmers, helping CSAs scale sales, run error-free fulfillment, and deliver 5-star service. Whether you're at 100 members or 1,000, Farmhand helps you grow without burning out. You've heard us and our farmers right here on Growers Daily. Explore farmer wins and learn more at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. All right, so Mikey, discuss maybe some of those specific challenges you faced there. And I think, like you mentioned having some struggles with that soil, and I feel like there's some that we have here too. So can you talk a little bit about what those were on that rented property, and then like how you kind of went about it?
Yeah, look, I think the initial challenge when you're jumping onto rented land is that you don't have a lot of time to kind of check check it out. Like, we didn't have the privilege of waiting an entire year and seeing it out. So when we actually signed the lease, it was in the summer period. So it's obviously the most dry time. Did some soil tests and things came back overall pretty good. A couple of things that were a bit concerning in the soil test, but the commercial opportunity was really amazing there. So in terms of location to market, and also there was a really well established grocery store on the site. So we were actually renting land behind a grocery store. So the majority of our produce was actually going from the farm, traveling literally, I'm not joking, 15 metres from our cooler room into the other business's cooler room being sold there. So in terms of commercial site, it was an incredible opportunity. But as I said, so that's why we kind of signed it. But the challenges started coming about in that wet spring. There was a very high water table, which we were unaware of. So wet spring, high water table, we found a lot of our growing area was just saturated with water and taking a hell of a long time to drain out. And anyone who's dealt with waterlogged soils, it is the enemy. It's an absolute enemy. So that was the first.
And this was clay soil, or what was the soil type there?
Yeah, it's a clay soil, which had, as I said, one of the concerns was it was a high mag soil. So it was over 20 parts magnesium, which is often, that means usually it's a tighter clay. So a tight clay as well on top of being a high water table, it was just really challenging. Like, you couldn't really get tractors couldn't really get tractors into the field, had to wait a huge amount of time for soil. So we had to pivot pretty quickly that first season to kind of understand, we did want to grow tomatoes, we did want to grow a whole lot of crops, but they just weren't going to work on the site because they had different root systems. So we had to really pivot, and we ended up growing some pretty amazing lettuces, funny enough. Obviously being a crop which loves water. Once, obviously, after a rain, after a couple of days, once the table went down, there was still enough water there to really feed certain crops. So we actually grew some amazing lettuces, a lot of quick cycle crops. So radishes and herbs were fine. Direct sown stuff like lettuce mixes were great, but anything that was a long crop was just an absolute challenge. So, like I said, high magnesium soils are really difficult to farm in. Certainly when you're not farming. Like if you've got big tractors and implements, you can really break it up, if that makes sense. But I think as a no-till, like working as we were at the time in a very traditional no-till way, the best way to manage a high mag soil is to just throw a hell of a lot of compost on it. And as an old mentor said to me, just farm above the clay. So that was kind of a tactic that we went for. And then, so that was just yeah, what can I say? It was just a challenging year dealing with those two primary things.
And then what about, you mentioned compost. Like, what is compost access like for you all there?
Yeah, compost is fine. We got plenty of pretty quality compost. It's usually just a cost analysis, isn't it? Really, of how much compost you can put down. There was one point we had an entire tunnel and we ran the numbers on what would it be like to drop 150 mil, so say 15 centimeters of compost right on top of that, the entire thing. And then at some point, that goes back to our early conversation around rented land. At some point, you ask yourself, am I putting far too much energy and capital into someone else's land? And that was the same with the drainage. Like, there were ways that we could put down. We got costings of putting on pipe drains and whatnot, and it just came, this is just not worth it. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, compost is a difficult one. Physical stuff, I guess you could make an argument with the landowner that, like, hey, we're improving the land, could you cost share this with us? But compost is difficult because it's like, I don't know if they would see it the same way. And maybe that's something that would have to be worked out, like in leases. But yeah, I get that. I totally get that. That's a really tough situation to be in. What about things like tools and seed access? Are those relatively, good for you all down there?
Yeah, tools and seeds, it's no worries. Like back 10 years ago when we started, 10 plus years ago, started in Australia when the industry was a lot smaller, like small scale farm stuff, it was very difficult. There's no Johnny Seeds down in Australia. Now we've got an amazing company, Activista Seeds in Tasmania, who have small scale equipment and seeds. But when we started, couldn't access a lot of that stuff. But now we've got a plethora of stuff. That's not really much of the challenge at all. So as I said, after that first year, I think when you're running a business, you've got to be pretty ruthless in many ways. You've got to make some pretty hard and fast decisions. And for us, it was, let's just pick up and move. There's no way we're going to be working as, market gardening's hard enough. You don't need extra challenges of a shitty site. You know what I mean? So do your due diligence.
What about things that you've learned in moving a farm? Because to some extent, you had to move it twice. Well, you had to move this one once. So were there any lessons in moving that farm just over the winter like that? Like anything you learned or anything you would have done differently on rented land with a vague plan to one day buy it?
Look, what can I say? Look, a lot of the infrastructure we could take with us, which we're very fortunate about. We had a lot of cat tunnels, which is obviously pretty easy to pack down. We had invested in, we had dropped a concrete slab. Can't move that, so that's a sunken cost. We also had been paying off a larger tunnel, sunken cost. Couldn't move that one; it was too large to move. So I think for us was obviously just relying on. Materials, even, we were saying before, even compost, we'd invest a lot in compost, you can't move that. So it's surprising how fast you can pick up and move a farm. I think we had everything almost packed down. Like the move was an entire week, probably took us a month to pack down beforehand. But now 2 years on from moving to this site, and we're moving away from equipment and infrastructure that is movable. We're now investing in large fixed structures, which I believe are far better for growing crops in. But obviously, you have to own a site to be able to invest in that capital, because often, it costs far more per square metre to build those infrastructure. But they're well worth it. They really are well worth it. You just have to have the ownership of the land to justify it, I think.
We've never had to lease ourselves. That's not never. We had a couple farms where we were working on family land that we thought we'd be staying for a really long time. So we kind of learned similar lessons. But we kept the infrastructure pretty mobile just in case, because we always knew we'd want to buy something somewhere. And that mobility aspect, I think, is really important. Was that concrete slab that you talked about, was that for wash pack, or what was that?
Yeah, that was exactly the wash pack area. We just were not willing to farm and do, we like to have a pretty clean and organised wash and pack. It's needed, health and safety. So dropping a slab was, I think, one of the best things we did at that site. Actually, was made it really easy to farm and process. But yeah, it was a good few $1,000s that were not going to be able to recoup. But good lessons learned. Moving to this new site, it became pretty clear where and what we should be investing our money in that was really going to be able to leverage increasing yield or increasing just the ease of moving around a site and the ease of growing. You just got to, at some point, you just want things to be slightly easier and smoother, and it's worthwhile dropping the capital, I think, to make those systems smoother.
I think that's you're not doing this on purpose, but you're setting us up perfect for the next topic of conversation, which is going to be some of those, tools and some of those, efficiencies and some of the things that maybe you've learned in terms of where to invest that money. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will discuss all that. Be right back.
Farmer Claire Coleman here from the Winter Growers Podcast. Did you know that I also founded Real Farmer Care, a nonprofit that supports farmer well-being? From my own experiences farming, I knew firsthand that this type of support was missing from ag, so I decided to do something about it. As of today, there are over 500 farmer recipients of a $100 self-care award, with more applying daily. If you'd like to help, each $100 donated supports one new farmer. Visit realfarmercare.com to donate and learn more. Again, that's realfarmercare.com.
All right, Mikey. So we kind of ended that one talking about some of the things that worked well and some of the investments you're making in the new property. With that, where did you start investment wise? What are some of the tools that you found you were the best place to put your money?
I think, honestly, I wouldn't say tools. The best place we put most of our money these days is actually is in greenhouses. We've taken out a number of loans since moving to this property in order to invest in bigger and better greenhouses. And we noticed that every single time we put up a greenhouse, quality's increased, the yields increased, and our ability to meet market demand has increased. It's a no-brainer. So this is anecdotal, but over the winter, if it takes, let's just say it takes 2 months to get a good let's say it takes 3 months to get a head lettuce outside of whatever quality it is in the middle of winter. A cat tunnel is half of that, and then the greenhouse we're growing is even half of that again. So having a larger greenhouse it basically it shortens the winter. Like our winter now becomes almost like an eternal spring. It's the temperature inside the greenhouse is, they can be 20, 25 degrees in the winter. This is an unheated greenhouse as well. They're just large, so obviously there's more thermal mass in there. And so we're just really taking out loans, paying them off, and buying larger greenhouses, and it's really night and day. It's incredible to see the quality difference between a cat tunnel per se and a larger tunnel, in my opinion. I'm not sure. Have you had that similar experience?
Oh yeah, I mean it's difficult to overstate how much. How handy a tunnel comes in terms of how early you can get stuff into production, just the quality of the production itself. Like things just look better. I think it's partially because of the diffuse light, and also just like, I don't know, there are other issues like pests and diseases that you have to manage. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, that's been a similar experience on our end for sure. But I am curious too with like the loans and stuff. Are you all, or do you all have access to much government support in terms of small scale agriculture there?
Not a huge amount. There's a couple of government grants floating around, but it's very state specific. So we're lucky in our state. There's a couple of government grants. I've got friends in other states which have absolutely none. So a lot of it is either going to the bank, going to your family, or going to partners. So we actually, one of our buyers, we partnered up and said we can increase supply of X and Y product, but we're going to require potentially a loan for infrastructure. They were incredibly supportive, and we bought a tunnel with a loan from them in order to supply them with more crops, which has been a mad success, a really awesome success. So we're hoping to extend that loan and get another tunnel so we can produce for them even more.
Yeah, that's great. And then how many employees do you have right now, or do you have employees?
Yeah, there's me, Kez, and we have one of our very close friends, Jay, who actually works for us again at Mossy Willow Farm. He then went off and started his own business, and now he's come back to work with us, and he's a full-time worker here. It's basically us three running the show, and then over the peak season, so 6 months over, so the last month of spring, all of summer, and then into autumn, we have two full-time workers that come on. So we're a team of basically 4 or 5 full-timers. Now that we've got our 8-month-old baby, either Kez or me are kind of subbing in and out of the role. So let's say it's 4.5 people over the peak season. So yeah, it's humming. There's a great team, and we punch out some good product. Yeah. Yeah,
and also now that I'm thinking about it, the timing of that would have been when you were moving your last farm. Like Kez was very pregnant, I'm assuming.
Actually, just after that summer, we kind of went through the summer, and then our first summer, and then Kez got pregnant just after our first summer. So yeah, it's been a big 2 years. Oh,
okay, yeah, right, okay, right, because you've been there for 2 years. Yeah, that's a lot of transitioning there. And then what about so with all those employees and with the sort of scale that you're working on with these wholesale, accounts and all this stuff, organizationally, what are some of the things that you've found have been super helpful in that regard?
The organizational stuff is literally still stuff that we were doing back at the Mossy Willow days. Like Kez is a weapon at management. She's just really on it. It comes to her by her nature. But we use Google Calendar religiously. So Kez does multiple walks around a week, builds a really solid schedule. It's very detailed. So all the staff. We share the Google Calendar for everyone. People can, they jump on. It says planting between, now until lunch, where they're planting, what the spacing is. So it just kind of limits all mistakes. So that's really, really clear. We have a team meeting once a week. So we're eating every single day together. So we're always communicating what's going on. I think that really translates to making sure everyone's on the same page. We have one formal meeting a week where we can kind of air things, talk about things, plan things. But I really do think the Google Calendar for us has just been the tool that's just made this farm really hum. And we've had that feedback from a number of workers who have been here. And after 2 weeks, they're like, wow, I feel like I'm always on top of my game. I always know what's going on. There's no surprises. And enables them to just work to their best, which they love. When workers feel like they know what's going on and they're not kind of twiddling their thumbs, or they love it and they thrive.
I love that. I also, after we talked, I don't know, one of our interviews, or maybe it was one of your conversations, then when you did the series for the No-Till Market Garden podcast, where you were interviewing folks, which was awesome, by the way, and I'll make sure to put that in the show notes so people can track that down and listen to some of those interviews. They were amazing. Was the use of Google Calendar. I use Google Sheets a lot, and I'm able to share that with other people. Especially like for our soccer organization, those things have been really, really helpful here locally, just in a non-farming way. But I love that. That's a super helpful thing that anyone can tap into, and that for me was a huge tip. Is something that we could use.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really great, and the search function on that's really amazing as well. Like sometimes Kez and I are kind of trying to work back, when did we plant this, how did that go, and the search function in there, when it's all really detailed week to week, you whack the search button and you can track down things, which is super handy. And I know for those people who are either doing food safety certifications or organic certification, there's a lot of documentation, and to be able to you do your best to kind of document everything, but where you fall short, it's nice to have systems in place that you can kind of lean back and hunt down that information. So yeah, definitely can recommend that for keeping things tight.
And with the organic certification stuff, are you using that same app like Series? You're just using your Google Calendar and stuff like that for keeping track of the organic stuff, or do you have anything separate that's going into?
We're using Google Sheets. Google Forms,
okay.
Yeah, Google Forms is how we're doing it. So we're not cert organic, but we have a food and safety certification that we do in order to sell to certain partners, which is kind of one step before kind of becoming cert organic. Would just be ticking a few different other boxes. Google Forms really is just super handy and easy to do.
I want to get one more question in here, mainly because I just like chatting with you. Like, you took that year or 2 years right after Mossy Willow, you went and you like worked on other farms, and you kind of went all over the place. Was there anything that you learned in that experience, or anything that you saw that like really stood out that changed the way you look at farming or look at small scale production? Because I know you worked on some bigger places.
Yeah, well, interestingly, so I actually at the same time I think we spoke about it once before as well. I did a scholarship with an international organisation called Nuffield. They operate in Australia, England, US, and I did a research on profitability and productivity of small-scale farms, and I got it in 2021. I actually finished writing the report about a month ago and presented it to the findings recently, and to basically what I stood in front of a room of pretty accomplished farmers, and I said to them, anyone who's here looking for a presentation on AI, on robotics, this is going to be the wrong presentation, because a lot of my findings, Jesse, that I came back with was literally back to basics. That's literally what I learned, that small farms, if they're wanting to increase their productivity and profitability, there was just a lot of back to basics that they needed to do, which were not related to technology or tools. It had to do with management, it had to do with financial literacy, it had to do with understanding the difference between profitability and productivity, and understanding those two metrics and analysing where your business is going. So really fundamental stuff, which was interesting because I originally was chasing, the next crop, the next tool, the next high-tech greenhouse sensor, but it wasn't. It was really just common business practice, which is making businesses thrive or survive, really.
That's an amazing observation to hear you say that, because that's maybe an assumption I make sometimes, is that it's sometimes just the simplest business things, just monitoring how much you're making and how much you're spending. Those little things that make such a huge difference. But to hear you say that after all the places you've worked and the travels is really kind of enlightening. And I'm glad we got to that part of the topic, or that topic. Is there anything else you'd add on that?
Well, what was funny was after I gave the speech, as I said, in front of, there was some top tier people in the banking world that were part of this conference that were there, some amazingly accomplished farmers that were listening, and I had just a lot of people come up after and say thank you, because they said it was a message that they wanted to hear more themselves. And I had basically, there's a bank in Australia, they're the largest lending bank to agricultural businesses, and he came over to me and he said, it's surprising whenever we do a survey we send out to farmers, and their self-perception of their own financial literacy is often way higher than it really is. So he said on some of their forms, farmers are saying that they have if it was out of 10, they were a 7 out of 10 financial literacy. And from all his experience working with farmers over the years as a banker, is that farmers don't have the most amazing financial literacy. And for their businesses to be more viable and to be being able to repay their loans and be more stable would be basically the message, going back to basics, understanding their business metrics, profitability, productivity. And so that's why he was really, I think, also stoked that my message wasn't about the next John Deere tractor that was sat nav. It was literally about just, this is what we got to do. Get back and understand your business.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I also think for some farmers, they don't really know where to start. So maybe we can end this giving, is there any recommendations for what you would say, like, where do you start when you're talking about like learning some of these financial literacy elements?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what I tried to do in the research as well was to step outside the farming world and tap into the entrepreneurial world and the business-wide world. And the more you listen to those podcasts, there's often there are similar names that get repeated, and one which has been really, a lot of your listeners might have heard of his name. His name is Mike McAllowitz, and he wrote a book called Profit First, and it's well known in the entrepreneurial world. Like, you cannot listen to a podcast without someone talking about profit first this, profit first that. So yeah, Kez and I actually got the book, read the book, and it's just a beautiful, simplified method of how to manage your accounts, how to manage your business, that really, I actually think it would work it actually works really well for a farming enterprise, because a lot of farmers are frugal, and a lot of it is about how to run and operate businesses from a very frugal perspective and a very controlled perspective, which minimizes risk and empowers you to be, I think, just very, very well versed into what's happening in your books. So I would really encourage people. It's a very simple read. It's a quick read. So Profit First by Mike McAllowitz. And I think that could be a launching point for people to find more interest in their accounting. But it's been really helpful for our business and for a number of other people who I've pointed in that direction. They've also really, really, really enjoyed it.
I think it's just, so often when people are talking about starting farms, they neglect the fact that we're all starting a business, and learning from other business leaders is critical in order to be able to stay afloat and thrive. And so no, I really appreciate that, Mikey, and I appreciate your time. I love our chats, and maybe we can do this again sometime. So thank you for coming on.
Absolutely, mate. Thanks for having me. I also really, I've loved working with you in the past. I've loved being a part of the show. I've loved listening to as many episodes. I can't even imagine how many episodes I listened to across the years. So thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
All right, how awesome was Mikey? I will put links in the show notes for how to follow Mikey and Kez in their farming journey at Five Tails Farm. Otherwise, that is it for this Wednesday. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes in case you're looking for like an end of the year, tax break. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of September, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Trish Buzan. Buzan? Not sure. I'm pretty solid on Trish, though. I think I got that one right. All right, so you will remember from Monday's Patreon story that we have our referee, Daisy, who has shown up to a match where her nemesis, Rusty, the coach, was supposed to be coaching, and he wasn't there. When she asked his assistant coach, like, where's Coach Rusty, the assistant said, oh, you didn't hear? And then proceeded to tell Daisy that no one had seen or heard from Rusty in a week. Not his boss, not his team, not his ex-wife, none of them. Being a rule-minded person to a fault, you will recall, this made Daisy frustrated. People don't just up and disappear, she said, and so after the game, Daisy started her search for Rusty. Love him or hate him, she refused to let Rusty disappear without a trace. That's just not how the world works. Also, Daisy was in college to be a detective at the time of the story, so that's both helpful and convenient to the narrative. And so the search begins tomorrow on the laws of the game. Oh, that's not bad. That's kind of a soccer reference there where they call the rules the laws. Anyway, thanks for watching and/or listening. We will see you then.